Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Gallowgateshots YouTube and podcast channel, and welcome back to another match preview. After what seems like a lifetime, we are finally back at St James's Park this weekend. We're playing Spurs in a 2 p.m. kickoff, and it is live on Sky Sports for anyone who doesn't have a season ticket or, like myself, lives further afield from Newcastle. I'm Scott. I'm your host for this one, and this week I'm joined by Joe and Mark. Joe, how are you this evening?
Doing very well, mate. Thank you very much. Ready to put the weekend behind us and have the lads put things right against Spurs on Sunday.
Yeah, fingers crossed we can do that. Mark, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, it's seems like a lifetime since I've done one of these, so it's good to be back. I thought I was joined by Martin Taylor for a moment there when you went into the introduction, and it's live.
Not quite. I think the last one you did was Southampton Carabao Cup second leg,
right?
Oh wow!
I know it was one. It was definitely one of the cup games because it was you, Decker, and Chris. So I remember it being an enormous smiling faces special, as we called it back then. And guess what, Mark?
So hopefully I'm a good look then.
Hopefully you are a good omen. Yeah, hopefully. And we haven't changed much either. As always, the Gallowgateshots match preview is brought to you by Magpin badges. They are your go-to site for high-quality, unofficial enamelled pin badges of Newcastle players, legends, and retro kits. Their website is magpinbadges.bigcartel.com. Did you see how smooth that was, Mark? Did you like that?
Loved it. You've definitely been practicing.
I mean, when you do as many in a week as we've been doing recently, you kind of get the knack of these things.
Better get used to it, you know. If we get into the European competitions, you know, we'll
every night.
Well, fingers crossed we can help cement that at the weekend. Like I said at the start of this, we do return to St James's Park for a Sunday afternoon kickoff, where we face fourth place rivals, would you say? Tottenham Hotspur, or Spurs, as we'll probably be calling them throughout this entire...
One of them.
One of them. Yeah, there's probably one of five. Joe, Spurs have been a bit hit and miss this season. It's going to be very hard to predict what Spurs turn up. They seem to, put in a good performance one week, and then the next week they'll get a draw or they'll get beat by a team you would not expect, a top 4 or 5 team to do. They're currently 5th in the league, as we mentioned, one behind us, 53 points on the board, which is 3 points behind us, but they have played one game more. They're currently sitting on 16 wins, 5 draws, and 10 defeats with a plus 12 goal difference. I normally ask this of Daryl, but as he's not here, I'll ask this of yourself. What are your confidence levels going into this Spurs game?
I don't want to sound too cocky with this because we know what Spurs can be, but Spurs have really dropped the bollock in the last, handful of weeks. Obviously, Conte, with his outbursts in being sacked, by mutual consent, it's obviously caused a major issue with them going ahead for the rest of the season, and they've not replaced him, and it's going to be a big job for them in the summer to try and really rebuild what is a bit of a derelict squad, really. You've got some fantastic players in there, but they're not really acting cohesively right now. And it was evident against Bournemouth just gone. They drew against Everton, and really, they're not a team that I think that we should be really fearing, to be honest. I think the game is there for the taking.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, they obviously do have some fantastic players, the likes of Kulevetsky, Son, Kane. They're not to be trifled with, and if you give them half a chance, they're going to take it. And that's why, although I'm confident going into this match, we still have to be very wary that they can pose a major threat if they do manage to get forward.
Yeah, we'll come on to kind of their style of play and some of their players a little bit later on. Mark, I always like to think that we were a bit of a bogey side to Spurs back, over the years. We've always kind of pulled out a result, thinking even back to Obafemi Martins, scoring those wonderful goals as he did way back when. Given, both sides had a bit of a shake at the weekend, and you probably say us more than them, really, because I think our performance was a shell shock as well as the result. Well, maybe it's not a shell shock, but a shock to the system. Do you think this will be more of a cagey affair where neither team really wants to give anything away, or do you think it's going to be a bit more free flowing because both teams are actually going to go for it?
Well, hopefully the latter. That's what you want to see, don't you? I think coming off the back of that result at the weekend for both of the teams, with you'd think that both teams would want to put that right and come out and give a good performance. We talked about on Monday night, we haven't been fantastic in the last couple of games, bar the second half of Brentford, but so you did think, maybe is that going to be coming? So you think Eddie's going to, have had them this week training very, very hard, focused on the game, the tactics of getting it right. As you say, Spurs are in a little bit of a transition period, really from what they've done. It seems to have been going on for months and months with everything that they've had going on. So you'd hope for a very good game, and like you say, Scott, we do seem to, touch wood, have a bit of a hoodoo against Spurs and always seem to pull it out of the bag, even when we're, back in the days when we were very, very poor. I remember last day of the season a few years ago, we absolutely tonked them when you just didn't think we had that performance in us. So, let's hope. I am going back to the question you asked Joe about confidence. I'm strangely confident about going into this game and facing Spurs, much so than I was for the Villa game at the weekend and even Brentford before that. So, yeah, let's hope that confidence doesn't come back to bite we're on the arse.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're quite right about us giving them some good games. I mean, obviously relegation season, last game of the season we beat them 5-1, and no one saw that.
Aaron scored, man.
Joe, obviously it's our first home game for a little while. Obviously the fans will more than likely be riled up for this one because it's been such a long time since we've been. I mean, I'm speaking like it's months. It's been 3 weeks, I think, since we were last at home. But it's been
a long time.
4 games. I think 4 games. If Man U was.
It seems much longer.
It does seem a lot longer. Do you think the home advantage will actually be an advantage to us, or do you think it could have an opposite effect given what happened last weekend? If, say, for example, Spurs were to go ahead early on in the game, would that make it a bit more cagey from the fans, to the Newcastle players, or do you think it's just going to be, like when Spurs came last season, right after the takeover, in that atmosphere that was in that stadium on that day? Do you think we'll see something similar to kind of right that wrong?
We're at a stage now in the season where top 4 isn't just looking like a bit of a pipe dream. It's looking like a very real possibility and something that we really deserve. And it's becoming a tangible thing that is very close to really being in our grasp. A lot of the fans are starting to think that, this could actually happen. And beating Spurs at the weekend is, I'd say, the first step on that last stretch to making that a reality. And because of that, I think the home crowd is going to be a huge advantage. I think it's going to be very similar to the Man United game that we just saw recently, because we knew how big that game was, and obviously everyone turned up. Everyone turned up in every single respect. Having said that, I mean, I'm not being funny. It's looking at Spurs. I think they'll also have a bit of a wake-up call against Bournemouth. They really, like I said before, they kind of threw away what could have been a really vital win and was almost a do or die moment. So they might look at this game now and say it is a bit of a do or die now. If they don't beat us, it's a long way back to trying to claw back 4th place. And hey, if we end up beating them at the weekend, they're going to start looking over their shoulder, what's behind them, immediately behind them, more so than what's above them. Brighton's closing in, Aston Villa aren't far off. I mean, Liverpool could even have a strong end of the season. So they'll also be up for it. But what Mark said is about Eddie Howe getting them back on the training ground. He was bollocking them when they were 2-0 up against West Ham, and there's not going to be I cast like a chance in hell that he's going to have them on anything less than double drills this week. He's going to want to right that wrong, and I'm expecting that to happen. So yeah, I think the home crowd is going to be well up for it.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. It's a hell of an atmosphere, and obviously, fingers crossed we do get the result. Mark, we'll talk a little bit more about Spurs before we move on to Newcastle. I just want to touch on their style of play and some of their strengths and weaknesses. I've been on my new favorite website, which I'm not going to say again. Watch last week's Villa if you want the web URL, the Villa preview. But Tottenham Hotspur's style of play, they like to take lots of shots. They like to attack down the middle and down the right. They're aggressive defensively, but they do like to play in their own half. I'm going to go through some of their strengths, which is probably something that could be a bit of a worry. Creating lots of shots and finishing those shots and scoring those chances are their strengths. They also hit on the counter attack. They're good at set pieces just for the personnel they've got, and they like to attack down the wings. Before we move on to their weaknesses, obviously we were heavily exposed on the weekend by playing down the middle and also down both of our wings, if you want to be fair. Is there a worry that the same could happen this week, given that Spurs play a very similar style in the wing play and in the playing down the middle with Harry Kane holding the ball up?
Yeah, I think the only kind of caveat for that is Kane isn't particularly fast. Whereas that was the big thing that really did trouble us at the weekend was the pace in the Villa team. Likewise against Brentford, with Tony, even though he's big, strong, he's still got a turn of pace around him, and the others that he's got in the team in and around him. So yes, whereas Spurs like to play in that way, I think you can look at the positions that they get into, but they don't attack in the same way as those teams do with kind of hitting. And like you say, I think Trippier was massively kind of target that space in behind him that he leaves when he gets forward. They were getting running at Dan Burn because they know he and Cher and Botman aren't the quickest in defence. So I think that's why we were more exposed for those. I mean, let's face it, Kane is absolutely a threat, but I think just in a completely different way to what we came up with Watkins in particular. So it's of no surprise that they take lots of shots because they do like to create that, get in and around. They're not afraid to take long distance shots and stuff like that. The partnership that Kane and Son have had over, particularly last season, they were fantastic. The pair of those. So they are always a threat, and I think that's what they'll be looking to do. So that's why our midfield in particular need to be strong in the middle of that park, because that was where we were really weak at the weekend. We went missing in the middle of the park. That allowed a lot of that freedom in the pitch. So I think if we can get a grip in there with, Joe Linton doing what he does, breaking up play, getting involved, Bruno back on it. It'll be interesting what he does in there and whether he'll go with Willock, whether Longstaff comes back in. You've then got that left wing side thing, even the right wing, because Miggy came back. So God knows what team we're going to be putting out, and we yet to come on to that.
Yeah, that will be a huge dilemma, which I think we say every single week on these match previews. Joe, we'll turn to Spurs' weaknesses, and there aren't many, but to be honest, the ones that were listed are quite big in my eyes. You've got individual errors, which I think lead to a lot of their goals against them. Fouls in dangerous areas, which again, would lead to goals, and you give Kieran Trippier, who's obviously up against his old club, any range of a free kick, and he's going to try and put that away. Defending long shots, protecting their lead. They do tend to throw away. I think we saw last week they had a 2-goal lead and they threw that away in the dying embers of that game. And then defending against skillful players. Now that was the one last week that I highlighted, thinking we've got Bruno, we've got Joe Linton, we've got the likes of Kieran Trippier, that sort of stuff, and obviously none of them performed. Are any of those weaknesses screaming out to you as something that we can exploit and we can use to our advantage?
100%. I was watching the highlights of the Bournemouth game at the weekend, and I think at least 2 of their goals came from high pressing just outside of Spurs' box. And what you just said there about leading to individual errors, they have several personnel who or can be a little bit slow in their decision making. Their back three as well didn't seem very cohesive. They looked a little bit panicky at times. And you know what our team's like? Well, if we smell blood, we'll go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So the likes of Longstaff and Joe Linton trying to win those balls back in really their final third to filter out to either the wingers or to go to Isak is probably what's going to win us this game. And also, I mean, their formation as well, they tend to play, like I said, with 3 centre-backs, and then they play with 2 wing-backs, which like to press very high up the pitch, allowing the likes of Son and Kulusevski to get a little bit more centralised. So that's going to leave up a lot of space. And when you think about it, we have plenty of overload on that side. You got Trippier, Joe Linton. I mean, whoever's going to start on the right-hand side, as Mark said. I mean, it could be Miggy, it could be Murphy, it could be Gordon. But whoever's going to fill in that role is going to be pressing high and is going to be working really hard. So I think that Spurs, if they're not careful, are going to leave a lot of space open at the back, and that's just going to punish them very early on. But obviously, you know, them pushing up themselves, we're going to have to be very strong in our defense, which, you know, Kieran Trippier is. I just worry that his lack of pace may catch us out a little bit if we bomb forward and then they break on the counter. Same with Dan Burn, really, if he starts. But, you know, I think there's definitely spaces at the back that we can exploit there.
Yep. No, Mark's got a little friend.
Doris
Just joined him there. Yes, Doris.
What does Doris think of the whole thing? Does she agree? Or...
Oh, there we go.
Doris thinks we're going to win 100%.
Of course she does.
Mark, I'll just quickly rattle through some of the injuries that they're currently listed for Spurs. Obviously, we record this before either team's press conferences on the Friday. We record this on the Wednesday. You've got Emerson Jr., Sessegnon, Ben Davies, who could be back, Bentancur and Lenglet. Now, Bentancur is one of their top assists for the season so far. And I think he's only recently just been injured. I think he maybe was only picked it up last week or the week before. Are there any names on there where you just think, yeah, I'm quite pleased they're not going to be playing? Or given Spurs' squad, do you just think, okay, well, they can rotate and be equally as strong or equally as weak based on what they do?
Yeah, I think Bentancur is the main one. He's been a big threat for them, hasn't he? And you know, even Sessegnon, he's done very, very well against us in the past. So I know he's been, you know, in and out of their team and stuff like that. So, but he was always very, very quick and caused us trouble. So I'm quite pleased that he's not in there. You know, even if he isn't capturing the form that we know he's been capable of in the past. So, but yeah, you know, as Joe's saying though, I think them wing back positions for those could cause us problems, but it could equally leave gaps for us to exploit. And that again, you know, plays into how we, you know, line up and approach this game at the weekend, and how it's going to go. Because, you know, on the attack, that's going to put an onus on our wide players to be tracking those and helping out the fullback when we're getting on, or the covering the runs back, you know, particularly Trippier, where we did see that getting exploited at the weekend. And no doubt, you know, the Spurs coaching team will have been looking at that and we'll be looking to see, you know, this is something that we can exploit down that left-hand side. So we definitely have to be on the game. You know, the no mugs, they're sitting fourth in the league, they're hot in our tails. So we just need to do everything that we can to keep that gap there, because as you say, there's a couple of other teams sniffing in just in and around below them. But should we beat them, when you look at the games in hand that we got and that little bit of a point gap, it could be a huge game. Potentially even the old 6-pointer phrase.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at Spurs' next 2 games as well, they've got Man U, then they've got Liverpool. So, I mean, I think
big chance
for Spurs, I think they would look at us as being the team that they should be winning based on previous and based on names on the sheets. But I think when you look at performances, actually, Spurs would probably be given more of a danger to Liverpool and you know, getting points off them than maybe ourselves. But we will see what happens at the weekend. And the only other player just to mention before we turn to Newcastle is De Silva is still suspended from the Everton game. That must have been a 3-match ban he got. So he's still out. But we will move on to Newcastle. There's only one name on the injury list outside of Emil Kraft, who we don't really mention because he's been out for all season and he's probably not going to come back this season. And that is Alan St. Maximin, Mark's best mate. Joe, we heard Eddie Howe say last week that we're going to get Maxi back this week. It looks like he's probably saying we're getting him back from wherever he was doing his incubation and his rehab to being at the club and training and not, back playing football.
Back from his oxygen tent.
His oxygen tent, that's what it was. Yeah, not incubation. The only other player, obviously, who isn't available is Ryan Fraser, and that's down to himself. But he did feature at was it the weekend or yesterday? I don't know what day it is.
Weekend.
Under 21s.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Monday, I want to say. And he got a goal on that. And apparently, according to the under 21 staff, he's been doing very well and being the ultimate professional. So, we're not expecting him to ever come back. But given that we only really have one player on that injury list who is featured this season, do you make any changes from last week, given how poor the performance was? And if so, what changes would you look to make?
Oh, and this is a really difficult one because players have been they were out of form at the weekend, but that's a blip. I can only see the weekend as a blip from a very good Aston Villa team who obviously deserved the win. But then you've also got players coming back. Miggy's coming back. He played some time in the second half, and I don't know whether Howe looks at that and thinks he's ready to start back up again, or whether he continues with Gordon. In the last Canny Chatter episode, which is out now on Spotify and Apple Music, we did chat about where we'd like to strengthen in the summer. And one of the things I did mention was, where do we play Gordon? Do we play him on the left, right, in the centre? He's a bit of a utility player, but he's yet to cement down a place in the main squad yet for various reasons. But you think now is the time that he's going to get a stretch of games. So you'd think that Howe's going to stick with him and stick on the right hand side. A little bit harsh on Jacob Murphy, but it's the way it is. Gordon has a lot of quality, and we want to be integrating him into the side for next season. So I think he'll probably stick with him on the right hand side. What I'm more interested in seeing is what happens with Dan Burn. And for the longest time, we've said on previous shows, is Matty Target going to get a game? And for the longest time, we've said, nah, he's going to stick with Dan Burn. I actually think that the weekend might actually be the time that we see Matty Target start a game. Big game to put him in.
Yeah.
But I just think, like we said, Spurs' front three have a lot of pace. I know, well, we said Kane doesn't have so much, but Son and Kulusevski really do. They drive hard and direct at players. And, with the wing backs supporting, we might need to have that pace in ourselves to exploit any space that they leave open. Matty Target might be the man for that. Dan Burn's done really well, and we know how much Eddie Howe likes consistency, so there is obviously the strong chance that he does start Burn. But I do think that there is a shot that Target does start this game at the weekend. It'll be very interesting to see that.
Yeah, I honestly think Dan Burn keeps his place. I think, like you say, the consistency side of things. He has had a tough couple of weeks. There's no doubt about it. But he is just a stickler for keeping that strong team in. And that, did he really do anything wrong? I don't know. So it's not like he's kind of gave away a huge goals or penalties or anything like that and had a stinker. He's just had a tough game, and I think Eddie Howe will give him the opportunity to put that right. But I think that'll be one that stays, but I do see a whole host of other changes. So for me, I'd love to see Sean Longstaff come back into that midfield. I think we massively missed him at the weekend, just in what he gives you of covering the field, dropping into positions, being able to cover on that. Although he's not playing out on the right hand side, being out that side on midfield allows him to drop in behind Trippier and give that little bit of cover. Likewise, on the left hand side, we've seen when Joe and Linton and Joe Willock have played out on the left hand side together, those two have kind of swapped positions throughout the game. both dropped in and helped on the left-hand side covering the fullback. So I could quite see changes there, and potentially, he might even look to put one of the Joes out on the left and then play, as you say, maybe Gordon, move Gordon from the left across to the right, or Miggy did pretty well when he came on at the weekend, so he might even, feel like chucking him straight back in. But I can see that happening. Sean coming back in and then going with the three that he had at the weekend in midfield, and one of them between the two Joes, or both of them kind of swapping in and running out onto the left-hand side and leaving, Bruno, the other Joe, and Sean in the middle.
All the
Lots
Joes.
of Joes. All the Joes.
Joe Willock did look a little lost, didn't he, on the weekend in that middle? It didn't seem to be his best suited role against that team. And obviously, when we've already mentioned that Spurs like to play it down the middle, Sean Longstaff is going to be perfect to try and nip that in the bud as soon as possible. And you can also then drift out, like you say, to the right or to the left to help there, which is another area where they like to attack. So hopefully he doesn't get the run around. But I'm in agreement with you, Mark. I think, it was apparent from 5 minutes into that game at the weekend against Villa that we were missing Sean Longstaff in the middle of the park. Apparently had tonsillitis, and that's why he's out. So hopefully he's back, or he's had them out, or whatever. And hopefully it doesn't affect him shouting at other players, or his presence on the pitch should still be felt. Any other changes that you're expecting, Joe? Maybe up front, do we start with Isak again, or does Wilson come back into the fold? Both didn't really play too well at the weekend, although when they came on together, you started getting chances.
Yeah, well, you think Isak's the obvious choice, but Wilson scored in his last 2 appearances against Spurs. He scored the absolute worldie goal, chipping it over Lloris, and then, as you mentioned earlier, the first game after the takeover, he scored in the first few minutes. He's got form against them. And he's come into a bit of form recently. He probably feels that he's not getting more minutes. He's not getting as many minutes as he deserves, given his record recently. And he's only being kept out by the fact that Isak is also on absolute fire. I mean, it's a great problem for us to have, having two strikers in form, right? I mean, we've seen both of them play a little bit of time together as well. I think I really like that, actually, what Eddie Howe's doing, changing the system up some way through the second half and giving defenders a different problem to work with. And what's really nice is it hasn't been a lot of time that they played together, but they do seem to have some natural link up, and they're two different players. So it's a great option. Having said that, the formation, that 4-3-3 that Howe's worked on for the whole season is what's got to this point. So you'd expect him to start that and not change anything. When you think about the reverse fixture, that high pressing, the likes of Longstaff and Miggy really won us that game. And I think that's going to be absolute paramount for this one. So I think they'll probably stick with the 4-3-3, likely Isak up front. But having said that, I think Wilson will definitely get some minutes.
Yeah, I think it'll depend how he thinks Spurs are going to approach it, because we know if you're going to put one man up against three defenders and expect them to hold up the ball and win it and stuff like that, then you'd go towards Wilson to do it. But then if you want them to press, hit them, with a bit of pace and run at them and put them under pressure, which we know they don't like, then Isak's the natural choice for that. So again, it isn't an easy decision of what, because both of them have got merits on how you approach this game, and but they'll both terrorize those defenders. It just depends on the way that Eddie wants to go about it and approach it. Does he want them running, somebody that'll run at them and try and draw fouls, try and get something in and around the box, or somebody that's going to go up there, stick alongside them, bully them, and put yourself around and bring others into the game. So
I have to say, though,
get the big bucks.
Exactly.
Yeah, true. I do have to say that Isak has been really good at dropping deep and bringing others into play, though. He's
almost been doing the Harry Kane role.
Yes,
in recent weeks, and he also seems to be able to make something from nothing. Like you'll see him with the ball, and you'll think there's no way he's doing anything. And he'll play between his legs, and he'll come out with the ball around 3 defenders. It's unreal how he does it, because he doesn't naturally look like he has, the body shape to be able to do that sort of stuff, but he can do it. We'll move on to our predictions. Joe, I will come to you first, mate. What's your predictions for this weekend?
Yeah, simply put, I think we're going to right the wrongs from the weekend, and I think we're going to beat them 3-1. Like I said, the high pressing, the goal scorers in form. This has everything set up to be that first step on that last stretch, as I mentioned earlier, and I think we're going to do it.
Awesome. Mark, your prediction?
Yeah, I'm backing us for the win as well. I'm going slightly more conservative, and I think we're going to win it 2-1. I just fancy us to get a couple of goals. They've got it in them to score as well, so we'll do good to try and if we could get a clean sheet, it would be nice. But yeah, a good 2-1 would do me nicely.
Yeah, I think I agree. I was thinking of 2-1. I was also thinking of 2-0, but then you just can't write off Harry Kane, can you? I mean, if you give him a smidge of a chance, he's going to take it. So I think 2-1 is probably a fair prediction, and I think that's what I'm going to go with as well. Hopefully it'll be as entertaining as the games of seasons past have been when Spurs come to St James's Park, and also when we go down that way, either White Hart Lane or the Tottenham Hotspurs Arena Stadium, whatever they want to call it these days. Always a good game, so I'm actually looking forward to this one this weekend. I wasn't very confident against Villa, and I thought that was probably going to be the toughest game, and it showed. Although I think we did all predict wins last week, but that's a different story. Anyways, we will wrap this one up. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Joe. If you like this sort of content, we have a whole host of stuff coming your way here on the Gallowgateshots YouTube and podcast channel. You've had the Always Smiling Faces podcast earlier this week. We've just launched Canny Chatter with Joe, myself, and Ian, and Daryl was a special guest because Harry was unavailable. That's available as an audio only on the podcast. Decker and I recorded a video about Premier League streaming. So if you want to look at that, that's on the YouTube channel. Extra Time returns tomorrow night, or Thursday if you're watching this any other time, because obviously we are recording this on a Wednesday. I totally forgot the day there. And then we'll probably come back with a match reaction after the Spurs game to wrap up the week, hopefully on a good note. So if you like all of that sort of stuff, Mark, what have they got to do?
They've got to like this video for a start and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to go even further, become a member.
Yeah, membership is $2.99 a month. That gets you early access to these videos, as well as access to the Telegram group. But yeah, scroll down, hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. So we will see you back for the Everton preview sometime next week. That'll get recorded. If it's on a Thursday, probably have to do it early on in the week. So expect that to come through as well. But thanks everybody for watching. We will see you all in the next one. Have a good one. Ta-da.